our mission is to explore how psychedelic and dissociative drugs like DXM, LSD, and THC might have influenced FSM's creative process and their often unusual ideas.
Absolutely, and we'll be using this really fascinating concept called the Bayesian brain to kind of help us unpack that.
Okay, so before we get too far into the brain stuff, can we back up for just a second and talk about who exactly were these 5 Starcle men?
Yeah, so 5 Starcle men, often shortened to FSM, was primarily a duo, Luke McGowan and Glenn Hobbs, and they were active in the 90s, mostly in the Lancaster, California, and Austin, Texas. And it's clear that they had this, deep friendship and this shared artistic vision, though a very unconventional one.
Yeah, and their music, it's definitely what you'd call experimental.
Oh, yeah?
And some of the lyrics, I mean, take these lines from their song, Can You Save Me?
Oh, okay.
Doesn't exactly scream top 40 hit, does it?
It definitely does not, and that feeling you get, like they're describing an altered state of consciousness.
Yeah.
It pops up in a lot of other places throughout the database as well.
Okay.
For instance, there's this quote from Glenn where he describes cutting up newspapers after taking LSD and trying to assemble words from the pieces.
Wow.
It's almost as if he was trying to find meaning in this random jumble of text, which really aligns with what we see happen a lot during psychedelic experiences.
It's like their brains were trying to make sense of the world on this whole other level.
Exactly, and that's where the Bayesian brain comes in.
Okay.
This framework for understanding how our brains process information and make sense of the world.
Yeah.
So imagine your brain as like a prediction machine.
Okay.
It's constantly generating these guesses about what will happen next based on your past experiences and the information it's receiving from your senses.
So if I see a ball flying towards me, my brain predicts it's going to keep coming, and I should probably duck.
Precisely. So when your brain's prediction is right, everything flows smoothly. But when there's a mismatch, which we call a prediction error, things get a little more interesting.
So are you saying that these drugs like LSD and DXM create these prediction errors?
They can, yes. These substances can disrupt the brain's usual way of processing information.
Okay.
Imagine the brain is suddenly flooded with all this sensory input that doesn't match its expectations.
Okay.
Colors seem brighter, sounds feel different, familiar things appear strange, and the brain scrambles to find an explanation for these really unexpected experiences.
And that's where things can get a little trippy or even lead to these delusional ideas that we were talking about.
Exactly. The brain might try to impose order on this chaos by creating new explanations.
Okay.
Even if those explanations are, well, a bit out there, it's almost as if the brain is being forced to get creative to make sense of the world.
Okay, so you've got these guys, FSM, experimenting with substances that could be messing with their brain's predictions.
Yeah.
But how does that connect to their music and their art?
Right?
Was it all just a byproduct of their drug use, or was something else going on?
We need to look at the content of their work,
Okay.
particularly this strange mythology they created.
Okay.
One recurring element you see is this term, Starcle.
Right, Starcle. It's like this cryptic phrase that pops up everywhere. Their songs, their costumes, their art.
Everywhere.
It's almost like some kind of secret code.
It is, and it's fascinating because it really resembles what we might call a manufactured belief system.
Okay.
Something that's, created by individuals, often under the influence of these altered states of consciousness, that takes on a life of its own.
So basically they've created their own reality.
In a way, yeah.
It's like how we were talking about the brain trying to find explanations for those prediction errors.
Exactly, and Starcle seems to be central to their whole philosophy.
Okay.
It's often connected to another recurring theme.
Okay.
Fight placement.
Fight placement.
We see this in their writing on these elaborate costumes they created.
Right.
It suggests a ritualistic element to their beliefs.
Uh-huh.
Almost like they're acting out some kind of cosmic battle.
Okay, so they've got these core beliefs, Starcle and fight placement.
Right. It's like they were building this alternate reality together, a world where, the normal rules didn't apply.
Okay, so we've got this fascinating mix of drug use, the Bayesian brain, and this bizarre shared mythology.
Right.
But I'm still struggling to wrap my head around how it all fits together.
I think a helpful way to look at it is through the lens of those prediction errors we were talking about.
Okay.
When you take drugs like LSD or DXM, Your brain is bombarded with this sensory information that doesn't match its predictions.
Okay.
It's like trying to read a book written in a language you don't understand.
Right.
So to make sense of all this jumbled information, the brain starts making up its own stories, its own explanations, even if they're totally outlandish.
So it's like the brain is saying, okay, I have no idea what's going on, but I need to come up with a theory that fits the data.
Exactly.
Even if it's totally bizarre.
Even if it's totally bizarre, and this could explain why FSM's mythology is so fragmented, nonsensical, and often disturbing. It's a reflection of their brains desperately trying to impose order on the chaos of their drug-induced experiences.
And the group dynamic just amplifies that effect, making those beliefs feel even more real and concrete.
Precisely.
Yeah.